Oh man, I've been so busy putting together XP Fest that I haven't had time to beat a hard game. So, instead, I'm going to take a break from the usual until we win this week and talk to you about a game I really love. A game that I grew up with and cherish to this day. Today we're going to talk about the adventures of Lolo, or as Japan likes to call it, Eggerland. Now, I know a lot of you already know everything about the adventures of Lolo. A blue ball fights to save a pink ball, all the while a giant lizard tries to eat them as the blue ball shoots eggs at skulls, gets shot by Medusa's heads, and dragons shoot fireballs at him. Okay, so the game's fucking weird, but it's awesome. Eggerland is a series of puzzle games mostly developed by HAL Laboratory. The first game, Eggerland Mystery, was released on the MSX on June 28, 1985 in Japan, and sometime later in 1987 in Europe. The game was pretty popular in Japan. It was an innovative game for its time, had 105 unique levels, and also had a map construction mode. Oddly enough, our little blue hero is not named Lolo, but rather Roro. And before you think this has anything to do with an inability to pronounce the letter L, the game also features a Lala, the pink ball that Roro must save. The cover art for the MSX game is pretty awesome too. Now, I have no idea what the cover art says, but it looks cool and features several enemies we've come to know throughout the Eggerland series, including Medusa, Arma, Skull, Gull, and Snakey, because it looks like a snake. The graphics are really basic, and the gameplay is pretty damn slow, but it's the start of an awesome series. Now, from there, we go to Eggerland 2, or as it's known in Japan, as Mekyu Shinwa, or literally, the Labyrinth Myth. Once again developed by HAL Laboratory and released in 1986 for the MSX and MSX2, and later ported to the Family Computer Disk System. The cover art for this game is surprising. For some reason, it reminds me a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog. While the speed of the game is essentially half that of the NES titles, this one is really unique. You're basically in a giant 100-room labyrinth. Some of the doors are locked and some of them aren't. You've got to make your way through the labyrinth, which means some puzzles can't be solved by entering a room from a certain direction, so you're kind of forced to take a certain path to make it to the end. Almost. Overall, I thought this was the weakest of the Eggerland games. The reason I love this series is for puzzle solving, not wandering around in empty rooms. It's a unique entry, I'll give it that much, but believe me, you can skip it. In 1987, HAL released the port of Mekyu Shinwa for the Family Computer Disk System and called it Eggerland. Often called Shodai, or the first Eggerland, it's often considered the first of the series and one of the better games. Updated graphics, revamped music, and 22 additional stages. It also has the funkiest cover I've ever seen. Now, this was made in 1987, and it has that kind of weird clay statue cover. Didn't Nintendo Power have the same type of cover around that time? You know, it's funny, I look at this stuff now and I keep thinking that they're just really awesome 3D graphics. Why do modern 3D games just look like clay to me? Our next entry in the series on the Family Computer is 1988's Eggerland, Mekyu no Fukatsu, which apparently means revival of the labyrinth. This one has 162 maps, with several of them being completely hidden from the player. This was a very common Japanese developer thing to do. I don't particularly know why, but a lot of Japanese developed games had the annoying habit of just hiding large chunks of the game, never giving the players even the slightest hint of a clue where they could go to progress. Once again, this game is non-linear. In fact, almost all of the early Eggerland games were non-linear, a very different style of play compared to the Lolo games American audiences had come to love. But that doesn't make this entry bad, far from it. It's one of the better Eggerland games out there. This entry is notable because it got rid of the insane timed rooms. Yeah, in the previous installments, there were timed rooms that, if you failed, you wouldn't be able to get the key that you needed to finish the game. Little bit of a design problem, that. Still, they hid half of the game without giving you a clue as to what you're supposed to do. It does hinder the gameplay a touch. Eggerland Sozo en no Tabadachi, or Departure to Creation, is technically the third game in the series on the Family Computer. Not really. This game was actually released as a compendium game to Revival, and not as a standalone game. A ROM cart for the FCDS, it features 50 stages and progresses linearly, unlike the previous Eggerland titles. And to be honest with you, this isn't really a standalone game. It was something in addition to Revival that allowed players to create their own maps. Yeah, this cart has a construction mode that lets you create and save your own puzzles. It's a pretty cool look at the family computer when it was still treated like a hybrid computer gaming console thing. Anyway, I'm not really going to go through this game at all because the provided maps aren't unique in the slightest. They're all reproductions from the original Eggerland mystery. At last, we come to the game that I knew and loved as a kid, Hal's Adventures of Lolo. Released on April 20th, 1989 in America, Adventures of Lolo never saw a Japanese release. Why? Well, even though Lolo was hailed as a leader of the block-shoving movement and was described as being all about fun, appeal, and simplicity, this game was actually just a cut-and-paste job with a very pretty wrapping. If you go back and play the previous Eggerland games, well, you've pretty much played Adventures of Lolo, except Lolo was linear and a hell of a lot easier than the older games. This was Hal's foray into the American market, and according to one source, Hal at the time was caught off guard by Lolo's popularity in America. So it was a good investment. They cut together a game and package specifically for the NES. It cost them next to nothing to put together, and it was a hit. This gave us two more excellent Eggerland games, Adventures of Lolo 2 and 3. And I honestly think these two games are the pinnacle of block-pushing puzzle games. The best thing about these games is they're not simply rehashes of old puzzles thrown together in a new game. Both games features brand new puzzles, but they both have their drawbacks. Lolo 2 only had 50 new puzzles, and Lolo 3 introduced a strange overworld that was completely unnecessary. Still, the gameplay is awesome, smooth and easy to learn, but the puzzles do have a steep curve to them. In one room, you'll be facing off against nothing particularly dangerous, and in the next room, you'll get murdered by Medusa's heads. Now, Lolo 2 got a Japanese release as Adventures of Lolo, like the Adventures of Lolo 1, but was basically the same game. But Lolo 3, on the other hand, well, this is a little weird. Lolo 3 kinda splits into two games here. While the JP and NA games are mostly the same, the Japanese game has some completely different stages and a strange difficulty curve that throws players face first into a brick wall before serving them tea and honey, and then lobs their limbs off one by one. Let's just say that Lolo 3 for Japan is uniquely bipolar. In America, Lolo 3 follows a bit more of a linear difficulty curve. And hey, you can choose to play as Lala. Now, I won't spoil the puzzles for you in Lolo 2 or 3. I think they're awesome games that you've got to go play for yourself. They're the peak of the Eggerland series, and I think the peak of block-pushing puzzle games on consoles. Sadly, this isn't how the Eggerland series dies out. Two games really killed Eggerland once and for all. Lolo's Great Adventure for the Game Boy, and Eggerland for Windows 95. It's not that the games were bad, they both held to the same Eggerland gameplay mechanic as in previous games, but there were two outstanding problems. First, the Game Boy version was, well, on the Game Boy. The biggest problem here was simply limitations. You couldn't have the same type of levels you saw on the NES, and this really led to simplified puzzles. Second was the Windows 95 version sucked. From the art design and sound effects to the puzzles and story, Eggerland simply lost its charm. Yeah, the puzzles were unique, but the game was difficult to play and was really hard to find. I mean, I live in New York City, and I can find literally anything from around the world if I look hard enough. I couldn't, for the life of me, find a source for this game. It just wasn't carried around anywhere at the time. But really, let's be honest here, it wasn't just those two games that killed Eggerland. HAL Laboratory created Kirby, the fat half-cousin of Lolo. That's really what killed Eggerland, and it died with a whimper. I don't blame HAL. Kirby was far and away more popular, and HAL is still pumping out Kirby games like there's no tomorrow. It's just that, maybe, one day, HAL will come around and revive this IP. Maybe. Alas, I can only dream.